Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS Inform. I'm your host, Bill Potter. It's Friday, and that means it's time to have State Senator Mark Messmer come into the studio and bring us up to date on what's happening, at least on the Senate side, at the Indiana legislature, which is going on right now until mid-March, right?
March 11th, probably.
Okay. So this was the second week of actual legislation?
Yes.
What happened this week?
Okay, well, we passed 11 bills on final passage this week, and 10 of them were just kind of clean up routine stuff. Really the most important one that we dealt with was Senate Bill 2, and it has a companion bill in the House, House Bill 1001. They're identically worded. Both passed, each chamber this week. They've flipped houses, had the hearings, and so by next week, both of them will be up for final passage, on the House and Senate floor. But Senate Bill 2, what it does is, last year we changed from I Step to I Learn, and last school year, all of those in the fall, all the schools got their grades, or their test scores on those, and then their potential grades. And some schools held relatively flat. Probably a few, could have went up in test scores and grades, but a lot of them would have seen drops in grades, and that's totally anticipated and across the country happens every time you change test standards. The new test, I Learn test, was developed by educators, really, to really focus in on, measurement of our standards that, that they're supposed to be, teaching kids and things kids are supposed to be learning. But it was a more rigorous test, and, with the lowering of average grades, we have to have a year, and we decided to go ahead and make it 2, because by the time we get done here this year, they'll be into the next wave of tests, and then next fall, we don't want to have to be, looking at. So they're going to give them a 2-year pause. I think we had agreed to a 1-year pause, in the fall. Everybody thought, all right, let's just give it 2 years, give everybody a chance to get, to get a new baseline set. But if you had an A grade before, you're still going to operate on A status. If your grades went from a B, C, or D or F, up, you can improve. If you were an F school before, you're not relieved of any of your improvement plans that you have to put in place. Everything that impacted, because of your prior grade, all stays in place. We just don't let a drop in test scores force you down a notch. So,
and does this then affect their funding? Why is this important?
Well, it does not affect their funding, but it does provide some accountability, across the state. You can look at your schools and your community and see how your kids are performing. There's probably a little bit of a disadvantage for urban schools, with a lot of, high poverty level, a lot of single families, a lot of, there's places where the socioeconomic, status of people and, everybody around here typically goes home. The parents, have meals for them. Their parents help them with homework. The stable environments play a big difference on how kids perform, and but it does not affect their funding. It does affect if a school is in an F status for, I think, 4 years. The state has the opportunity to take them over, to bring in a new administrative staff and try to get a corrective plan in place. It doesn't mandate that they be taken over. It used to be 7 years on the failing status, and the state could come in. They've tightened that down. So now, but it doesn't mandate a takeover, because you could say, you could explain your F grade based on a high percentage of, people that don't speak English, a high, low income, community. There's things you could get a waiver from, from a takeover if you've got an improvement plan and you're really pushing. And I think they're going to, as some of the other House bills that are coming through, they're going to look at those test scores and not base the A, B, C, D, F grades so much on your flat, what was your score, but did the students within your group, did they improve year to year? And give the grade more emphasis on, did take a kid who was a, 20% last year and get him up to 30% this year. Still might not be a great score, but did you move kids up? And if you did, then rate your performance as a school more on, on how you're doing, raising kids' standards rather than just trying to compare Jasper to, downtown Indianapolis. So I mean, just different factors that influence, how kids perform.
Okay, this is a really big bill. Everybody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. So it's going to pass.
It
Obviously,
will pass.
both.
It passed unanimously in the House and the Senate first half, and I would imagine when the bills flip, it'll be the same.
And then the governor will get it. This will be one of those that will take effect in July?
It'll take effect on when he signs it.
Okay.
So as soon as one of the other bills pass, it'll go straight to his desk and be signed off. So within a day or two of passing both chambers, it'll become law.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about some bills that you have had and the progress on those.
Okay. Well, I filed 10 bills, and I knew some based on some of the historical precedent. Probably we're going to be in for some rough sledding, and and a short session especially. You just have at the most 4 committee hearings, and if depending on the timing. Like next Monday would be one of my hearing days, and we don't meet because it's Martin Luther King Day. So I've only got 3, and that impacts a lot of committees only get to meet 3 times, some 4, and so just from the sheer numbers of things you can do in a limited hearing time, I had 4 bills that I know are of those 10, they're not gonna make the cut. Okay. So that's okay. There's always next year. And I got 4 of them that are 3 that moved already, 1 that will highly likely move, and 2 more I'm trying to work on to get some consideration from the committee chairman to go ahead and let them fly the last week or 2. One that's already passed out of committee, passed second reading process yesterday was Senate Bill 78, and that came to me from the Lieutenant Governor's office. They've got a program called Shovel Ready Sites. And the Office of Community and Rural Affairs administers that. They do it under contract with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. And that memorandum of understanding is due to expire next year. So this was, extending that, agreement process with OKRA and IEDC to let that process continue. I mean, a pretty simple bill, but it's something that, as long as the governor and lieutenant governor agree that that agency is going to be the one administering it and not IEDC. Let's just go ahead and let that happen without a contract expiration having to be dealt with every few years. So, and I think as that plays out, we may go ahead and just fully we've done that before too. Move things from the governor to the lieutenant governor. I mean, I've had agencies and bills that have moved oversight from different things from one to the other over the years, and we may end up just permanently moving it to OKRA before session's out, but we'll see. At least this puts it in a non-limbo status, so they know they're going to be, continuing to operate it without, their contract expiring. So that one will be up for final passage on Monday, and should just pass. I mean, I'm sure it'll pass unanimously. I got 2 other bills that were in committee this past week. One deals with, under your automotive or homeowners policy, you have a coverage called medical payments or med pay coverage, and it's usually $5,000 to $10,000. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's designed to give you cash to pay your out-of-pocket expenses. Pay your deductibles, pay your co-pays. Maybe pay things that aren't covered by your health insurance. You might have an automobile accident, get your medical your medical procedures covered. You might have to go to physical therapy, after that, and your medical insurance might limit you to 12 visits a year. This would allow, the MedPay coverage is designed to let you pay for things that are out of pocket that aren't covered by insurance or that are part of your, to meet your deductibles.
This has to do with basically a car accident.
It could be a car accident, or if somebody gets hurt on your property, slips and falls on your sidewalk, breaks their arm, breaks their leg. It gives you the ability to pay for those claims that might not be covered under your medical policy or theirs. And a couple of things have developed over time that have caused, I've had constituents contact me where maybe and every time you go check into the hospital now, whether it's in the emergency room or any kind of medical procedure, you sign a waiver on one of those 6 pages of things that you sign that you waive your rights to use your medical pay coverage, and you relinquish it to them. So
And when you're in an emergency room, you're not thinking of things.
you're not thinking of
You're
that.
just signing
You're
away
just
just to get the care.
to get to get treated, I got to sign this, so I sign it. And so what this bill would do would be prohibit that.
Okay.
It would give you the option of waiving that, but not let them mandate that you waive it, because you might say, you might be uninsured. There might be times where you have med pay coverage, you don't have, you might not have medical coverage. Mm-hmm. It could happen. So it gives you, as the consumer, the option of how to apply it. And then if you've got medical insurance, it requires that your medical insurance, your health coverage, be primary insurance, and apply all of the process your claims through your medical coverage, and then your medical payment benefit, then becomes secondary, and it allows it to backfill and cover deductibles and things like it's supposed to.
Okay.
So it'll cover those two procedures. Make sure that indeed is what happens. Sometimes insurance companies make you use it up first. Sometimes hospitals, take it, and then instead of them getting paid at their normal Anthem or United Healthcare, reimbursement, they're taking full retail dollar and using that medical payments benefit to
cash in.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Yeah.
Can't blame them.
Nope.
The other bill that I've had a hearing on this week went very well. It was part of my Senate Bill 551 last year. We took it out just to give the judges some time to weigh in. It's Senate Bill 206, and it deals with depositions of children that are sex abuse victims. Now, and through that, we had a great hearing. We had some judges, defense attorneys all weigh in. The prosecutors weighed in, and we'll do some amending to the bill as I've got it drafted. Had some really good discussion on the issue. We don't want to give a defendant who's been falsely accused, or anybody, whether falsely or truly accused, we don't want to impede on your ability to defend yourself. And clearly, we'll do some changes to make sure that doesn't happen. But if you're a child victim, you're the most vulnerable victim probably in the court system in that scenario. We want to make sure that, and around here it doesn't happen. I've talked to Judge Verkamp. He said our local attorneys are very sensitive to that. But we don't want defense attorneys, and across the state it does happen, where they intimidate a victim so bad in the pretrial deposition portion of investigating a crime that the parents can't get the child, or the parents don't want to make the child go through that again. And if there's no witness, there's no crime, and maybe a person who's truly guilty escapes because their defense attorney doing his job, but maybe doing it in a very unfair way, bullies a child into just not getting them back to court. So this would fix that problem, and we've got some, took some good input Wednesday on how to address it. Got an amendment that we're working on now, and it's back on the calendar for next Wednesday.
Okay, so they'll come up for hearing, and then okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome.
It's always good to see you.
Yep, great to be
And
here.
you can always reach State Senator Mark Messmer by contacting him through the internet or on your website, or just simply giving you a call is another way. When you see him out in public, and you seem to be a little bit everywhere.
I try to be accessible.
All right. Well, thank you very much for
You're
coming
welcome.
in.
Great to be here.
Thanks,
as
Dan.
always.
And thank you for watching 18 WJTS. Our guest has been State Senator Mark Messmer. We are local people watching local people.